Meet Poiuytrewqas. They're a Challenger mid Katarina main on the Korean server who has maintained Challenger average since May 2020. Poiuytrewqas is playing daily versus the best LoL players in the world, and he does it without flash. He wins versus players like Faker, The Shy, Deft, and tons of other Korean and Chinese pros, and he does it with his own unique playstyle. I'm going to show you how he does it. Ignite Flash are the most common summoners to take on any assassin in League of Legends. However, Poiuytrewqas realised that Flash does not actually assist Katarina's playstyle as much as other assassins. Champions like Zed or Talon love gap closers and love Flash as a way to set up their combos. Katarina as a champion does not need Flash to set up any of her combos, and would rarely use it effectively. Poiuytrewqas' playstyle is built around the fact that he is not taking Flash, and thus relies heavily on his E for repositioning. Katarina does not suffer without Flash, and she has multiple daggers to get multiple jumps, so when played well is one of the most mobile champs in the game. Poiuytrewqas is Korean Challenger, so he isn't just playing her well, he is playing her perfectly. There is no better evidence for Kat not needing Flash than a player who can outplay other Korean challengers without it. So why is this strategy so good? If we look at current champion win rates for mid lane, the best meta mid laners for solo queue are roam champions, with the mobile control mages way down at the bottom of the win rates as they cannot affect other lanes. Katarina fits the roaming playstyle well, and we will all know that respecting a Katarina bot lane roam is vital to ensure they do not snowball out of control. Poiuytrewqas does roam bot lane and wins a lot of games that way, just like many other Katarina players. However, Poiuytrewqas' secret weapon to make this style even more effective is the TP instead of Flash. Katarina needs the Ignite early game as damage to finish off enemies in 1v1s and secure resets in fights. The Ignite is one reason her level 3 power spike is so huge, and so it was not an option to be replaced. By replacing the Flash with TP, Poiuytrewqas is able to strengthen many sections of Katarina's kit. TP can be used firstly to help with laning phase. If you're in a bad matchup and are unable to stay in lane, a base and TP back to lane can stop you from missing gold and CS, while also opening up a kill window on your enemy laner with the TP movement speed and a health advantage. TP can also give you a great recovery tool if you die in lane 1v1 or to a gang, as you can just TP back to lane and sometimes even pick up a free kill, again using that new TP movement speed that even Korean pros do not respect. Finally, the main way Poiuytrewqas uses TP is for extra roams that he would otherwise not be able to do. We have all seen TPs in solo queue and pro play, where a top laner teleports to a ward behind the enemy bot lane and gets a free double kill. If Katarina does this, the game can just end. 2 free kills, free CS, free XP and tower plates is a huge swing in the game, and Katarina doesn't need much help taking over games. The TP covers for Katarina's slow roams, especially compared to an assassin like Talon, who has an ability specifically good for jumping walls that lets him roam fast. TP is also used by Poiuytrewqas to allow him to side lane later in the game. He does not fully commit to a split push strategy, but Katarina in a 1v1 against any other mid is going to be able to look for repeated solo kills with her mobility. From the start of the game, Poiuytrewqas has a very specific game plan. He's played over 800 games of Cat this season, so knows exactly how to play each phase of the game. At level 1, Poiuytrewqas takes Q and aims to grab as much XP and CS as possible without taking poke. Katarina has a very weak level 1 and 2, which is made up for by her huge level 3 power spike. Poiuytrewqas rarely trades before level 3, unless the enemy mispositions, mostly using Q to take CS instead of poking. At level 2 he does the same, not even risking walking up to the wave in some matchups. At level 3 is where the fun starts. Poiuytrewqas is a master of Katarina combos, so will immediately start looking for a kill at level 3. He does not go overly aggressive, but will always keep in mind the fact that one wrong move from the enemy will be a kill. As I mentioned, this would not be possible without the Ignite, and the damage to kill can be quite exact, so practicing this scenario is important. If Poiuytrewqas has been poked down too much to stay in lane, he will base. If there are any opportunities for a TP on the map, even at level 3, he will take them. For example, if the enemy jungler is about to gank top from vision, he will ping on the way and TP to turn the fight. If he sees a fight happening bot lane, or a ward behind the enemy laner, he will TP bot and focus the most out of position enemy. Otherwise, Poiuytrewqas can TP mid if the wave is pushing into his tower, but he prefers to walk back to lane and save TP if he's not going to lose any CS. Saving TP can be the difference between getting 2 free kills bot lane, or just a few minions mid lane. Before looking for a TP from lane, Poiuytrewqas makes sure to manage his wave properly by ensuring it is pushed out to the enemy tower, then using TP from a safe location. He's not risking any losses when he TPs, which means that the TP will always have a positive or neutral outcome. This is a mistake that lots of mid laners make, roaming at a poor time, losing mid wave and gold, then not getting a kill bot lane. Poiuytrewqas does not only use TP to roam, much like any other cat player, he also walks through to bot lane, especially if his jungler is there to dive. Even in Korean Challenger, players still get caught out by Katarina roams, as sometimes even staying behind your tower will not be safe enough. In the late game, Poiuytrewqas often groups with his team and lets them engage fights. Katarina's only engage is to jump in with E, so he usually prefers to let his team lead fights than jump around too fast for enemies to even track where he is. Katarina can follow up pretty much any engage due to her E distance and resets. Poiuytrewqas often starts fights from way behind his team, chasing to catch up, and ends them behind the enemy team after picking up multiple kills. He pushes the limits of the champion, always knowing where his next dagger will land, and using every available escape option he has to remain mobile and dodge abilities. Dagger placement in team fights is very important for Poiuytrewqas. One common strategy he uses at the start of fights is to drop a W, dagger, on the ground and run away from it towards his team. He places this in a position he believes the enemies will be walking, so that he can use it as an entry point to a fight. This is an added option for him if his team chooses to engage at that point or back off, and keeps enemies guessing. Even if enemies predict that he will use it as an entry point, he can instead dash to an enemy and use it for a reset to then reposition again and completely trick the other team. Poiuytrewqas uses Katarina's resets to perfection in fights, using ult early to get enemies low, then comboing Gunblade and Q to continuously allow him to finish off enemies and move on to a new one. Positioning as an AD carry versus Poiuytrewqas is impossible, as 1 second he will not even be in the fight, then the next he'll have killed your support and use the reset from it to dive you onto tower. Poiuytrewqas is happy to trade his life for fight wins, and prefers to push Kat to her limits. His main goal is to output maximum DPS, finishing off as many enemies as he can, and then using resets to escape when possible. In terms of matchups, Kat's worst are champions for CC and tankiness, or ones that can outdamage her combos. Counters for Poiuytrewqas are likely different for players with fewer Kat games. This season, for example, Poiuytrewqas has played 800 games of Kat and only 1 game of any other champion, so he is able to find a way to either win or go even in any matchup he decides to take. Statistically, the worst kind of champions for Katarina to play against are those like Renekton, Cassiopeia, and Galio. Renekton can survive her damage and burst it with his combos. Cassio can stop movement with her W while keeping DPS going with her E, and Galio is a counter to many magic damage champions while also having CC and the ability to follow her roams with his ult. Poiuytrewqas struggles versus mids with ranged poke like Zoe early, but quickly outscales this in the 1v1, so only needs to play passive for a few levels before gaining an advantage. The way these champions beat Kat are to poke her out of lane, and TP is a great way of fixing this. For his build, Poiuytrewqas starts Doran Shield and Potion most games, especially into any poke lane, like Zoe or LeBlanc, where he can die early. Sometimes he swaps this for Doran's Blade or Longsword 3-pots in free lanes like Twisted Fate, where he has very little chance of death, as TF cannot outdamage him at any level in the lane. As Kat's early game roams are so important, Poiuytrewqas buys tier 2 boots first most games, which lets him use his level 6 power spike to roam and start picking up kills. This is the best way to emphasize Kat's early damage, as it is cheap and gives movement speed, unlike future items, which mainly aim to solidify her mid-game damage and are expensive. You don't want to have to buy a 3,400 gold item before you can affect the game on a snowball champion like Kat. Next item he rushes is always Hextech Gunblade, as it increases Kat's damage by so much, while also keeping him healthy in fights and giving a small amount of CC that lets him stay on top of the enemy. Versus AD champions like Zed mid or Jace top, he would then buy Zhonya's. He's also more likely to buy this if he's not ahead, or against high CC enemy teams to allow him to survive in fights. If he is ahead, and not against a higher AD enemy team, he prefers to go Spellbinder, which again helps his movement speed, as well as gives him a high damage burst to start off his resets in a fight. All he needs is to pop one enemy, and then he can use that to unleash Kat's true power, so Spellbinder gives him the front-loaded damage to do this. He then buys Void Staff, even if enemies don't have much magic resist. Sometimes he even skips Spellbinder and buys this second to preemptively counter any MR built by enemies. I think this is mostly a preference purchase for Poiuytrewqas, with the majority of Cat mains preferring Rabadons before Void. But clearly, if he's able to carry games in Korean Challenger with it, it can't be terrible. It is inefficient if enemies do not have any magic resist, as it gains more value the more magic resist they buy. But if it can help him shred through a single tank to get a reset, then I guess it's worth it. After this, finish the build off with any missed items, leaving you with a final build of Gunblade, Boots, Spellbinder, Rabadons, Void Staff, and Zhonya's. As an assassin player, Poiuytrewqas tries to end games as fast as possible before enemies can buy magic resist and lower his ability to carry. This, as well as him being in Challenger, the elo with the lowest game times, means that he does not often even get past 3 items before winning or losing, so make this your goal with his playstyle. For runes, Poiuytrewqas always takes Electrocute on Cat, as well as Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, and Relentless Hunter. Electrocute is essential to Cat's early damage, Sudden Impact synergizes well with her E, and Eyeball Collection is great for any assassin, as their goal is to be killing lots of enemies and using that to end as fast as possible. Relentless Hunter is great as Cat loves movement speed, as you can see by his build, allowing him to roam more and be even more slippy in fights. Poiuytrewqas changes secondary runes depending on the matchup. Against a high CC enemy like Twisted Fate, he takes Precision for Legend Tenacity and Coup de Grace. The Legend Tenacity choice is the important one in this matchup, as it means you can get out of their CC faster and start to return damage. Against enemies he can fight early, he takes Triumph instead of Legend Tenacity, as it's not required. Against poke matchups that he needs to survive all-ins early, Poiuytrewqas takes Resolve Tree with Second Wind and Overgrowth. I hope you enjoyed learning about Poiuytrewqas. He has a Korean YouTube channel, which I'll link in the description. If you want to watch his replays or follow his Challenger climb to rank 1, then his OPGG will be in the description also. Leave a comment to let me know if there are any other players with interesting solo queue strategies that break the norm, and subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.